Matilda was born in Mantua in 1046. She was the third daughter of a powerful Christian family in Italy. Her mother was Beatrice of Lorraine, cousin of Emperor Henry III the Black, and her father Boniface III, Margrave of Tuscany, and they were owners of many lands in the north of Italy. She wanted to become a nun, but life gave her another course, as her father was murdered in 1053 by a disgruntled subject who threw a poisoned arrow to his throat when Matilda was only 6 years old, so her mother took charge of the family possessions until the young Matilda grew up and assumed that responsibility, thus becoming a feudal lady with a lot of power, one of the most influential women of her time. In fact, she is considered the most powerful woman of the 11th century. She spoke French, German, and Latin, and with her brother Frederick she also learned the military techniques and strategies that made her go down in history. Both Frederick and her other sister Beatrice died victims of food poisoning, leaving Matilda as the sole heir to a vast patrimony. In 1069 or 1071, she married Godfrey the Hunchback, despite detesting him. They had only one daughter, Beatrice, who died a few months after her birth. Godfrey was the son of her stepfather, Beatrice's second husband, also called Godfrey the Bearded. When Matilda's first husband died 5 years later, she continued to cultivate political dominance in her lands and decided to be a mediator between the power of the pontificate and the imperial lay power, especially in the conflicts produced by the prohibition of lay investitures by Pope Gregory VII. Before becoming a widow, Matilda abandoned her husband and tried to repudiate him, something that at the time was reserved for men. Sometime later, in 1088, when she was over 40 years old, she had to marry again for political reasons, and with the influence of Pope Urban II, this time with the young Welf II, only 15 years old, heir to the Duchy of Bavaria, who came from the family of the Guelphs, important supporters of the papacy. However, the marriage failed from the beginning and they separated a few years later without having offspring. From the Apennine Mountains, Matilda was master and mistress of the territories of Lombardy, Tuscany, and Emilia-Romagna. The great countess built her castle in Canossa, capital of the county of Tuscany, and became vicereine during the mandate of Henry V. She built more than 100 churches and monasteries on the pilgrimage road that went from France to Rome, the famous Via Francigena. What was triggered by the Investiture Controversy caused for a long time a constant tension between the imperial government and the Catholic Church, until finally the papacy regained its authority after the issue of the Crusades. This quarrel originated from the dispute that arose between the civil power of the Holy Roman Emperors and the ecclesiastical power of the papacy over the dominion of clerical properties, rents and titles. It lasted from 1075 to 1122, during which time several popes and emperors clashed. Pope Gregory VII had established ecclesiastical celibacy so that priests could not have legitimate offspring to inherit their properties, so that the granting of ecclesiastical fiefs should be for the clergy by the supreme pontiff or his legates. But in this arose a conflict of interests for the monarchy, because for kings and emperors, the clerical fiefs were first fiefs whose investiture corresponded to them. Faced with the general uproar, the Pope established even more prohibitions that placed his authority above the imperial, so that the Emperor Henry IV decided to ignore these decrees to the point of arbitrarily appointing archbishops, both in Germany and in Milan. The reaction of the pontiff was to dictate the excommunication and deposition of the emperor. And in turn, Henry IV decided to turn to Gregory VII to ask for forgiveness, since most of the princes of the empire were aligned against him. But the Pope took refuge in the castle of Canossa, fearing that the emperor would make an attempt on his life. In the castle of Matilda of Canossa, he found the protection of his strongest ally, who also always offered him money and military defense. This episode of supplication that Henry IV made before the Supreme Pontiff Gregory VII is called the Humiliation of Canossa. Although the Pope was slow to grant him pardon, he finally lifted his excommunication and freed him from the anathema, thanks also to the mediation of the Grand Countess Matilda and Abbot Hugo of Cluny. However, the Emperor and the Pontiff knew that the conflict was just beginning. Moreover, in the face of the conflict, Matilda decided to defy the Emperor by inheriting to the Church all her domains that were previously under imperial jurisdiction. So the Emperor ordered his troops to subdue those territories and even banished her. In 1079, Henry IV defeated Matilda and Gregory VII in the Battle of Volta Mantovana and imposed the anti-pope Clement III, but she later defeated him in the Battle of Sorbara, province of Modena, on July 2, 1084. After the death of Gregory VII, Matilda continued to give her unrestricted political and military support to Popes Victor III and Urban II against the imperial armies and the anti-popes appointed by the emperor. For example, in 1087, the anti-pope Clement III had expelled Pope Victor III from Rome, and Matilda of Canossa attacked him with her army, occupied part of the city including the Castel Sant'Angelo, and succeeded in returning the pontiff to the Vatican. Moreover, years later Matilda again defeated Henry IV's troops at Canossa. Despite attacks by the emperor in 1090, who plundered property and conquered Mantua in 1091, Matilda persisted in her loyalty to the Pope. Matilda died on July 24, 1115 of gout. Before her death, she spent her illness near the chapel she had built to listen to Mass from her bed. Thanks to Pope Urban VIII, she was buried in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican in 1645. Don't close the video yet. If you like everything related to the medieval period, this is your site. If you found this video interesting and would like to see more videos, subscribe, leave us a like and write in the comments what other battle or character you would like to see in the channel. This will help us to grow and keep creating much more content. Now, with nothing more to say, we say goodbye.